Metroid. It's a series so awesome that we haven't gotten a game in nearly 5 years. Man, that is soul-crushing. Okay, so Metroid has been on the back burner for a little while now, but that hasn't stopped Samus from being one of the most loved characters in Nintendo's roster. While it's unclear at this point if there's anything new around the corner, that won't stop me from daydreaming about what might be in store. So, without wasting any more time, here's my top 5 ideas for the future of Metroid. Should we get a new Metroid, I'd absolutely love to see it return to its side-scrolling roots. Super Metroid and its successors Zero Mission and Fusion all have a certain feel and weight about them. With organic and precise movements and an overall eye-catching style, these games still feel amazing years after their respective releases. So, give me a new title in this style, complete with the quickness and flow they're known for, and update it with the new hardware and software available. A 3DS Metroid with all that pseudo 3D goodness would knock it out of the park. I'm thinking something similar to the recent Donkey Kong Country games developed by Retro. A return to the side-scrolling perspective we're all familiar with, but incorporating a huge amount of vibrancy via detailed environments and the wonderful ability to move between different locations on screen. For example, in Tropical Freeze's opening stage, you blast up around this giant stock via barrels, with the camera rotating all the time to provide a nice cinematic perspective. Right away, this highlights how 3D can be used in unique ways to enhance different environments and actions. Then before we know it, we're back to all that side-scrolling goodness. Now imagine this scenario, but instead we're using the morph ball, flying down a tunnel. The game shifts to a hollowed-out view to provide greater detail, similar to the morph ball sections of the Prime games. And before we know it, we're back to a side-scrolling perspective. Only there's all the depth provided by 3D, placing us firmly in some massive cave network. The vision I have in my head for this type of game is absolutely marvelous, and would honestly work on either the 3DS or the Wii U. Hell, I'll be greedy, give me both. So long as I can explore some grand environments as my favorite badass bounty hunter, all in the glory of a new and polished 3D style, man, I won't complain. So Samus has a lot of abilities. No, really, missiles, bombs, different beams, visors. She's had quite the arsenal over the years. Not only that, but with the introduction of the scan visor and the lore you can discover, as well as increasingly detailed maps, there's a lot of information there to process. While I think it's a relatively obvious and simple aspect, I'll say it anyway. Use the Wii U gamepad and/or the 3DS touchscreen for item management, maps, and information. The 3DS remakes of Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask have shown how crucial and intuitive this change can be. The water temple used to suck because of how tedious it was to change the iron boots. But with the convenience of the touchpad, the switch is incredibly easy to make, turning a once-hated dungeon into something enjoyable. While the Metroid games have always struck a nice balance between switching weapons and seeking out more info, creating a dedicated place for small details would be neat and useful. So there's this game called Metroid 1.5 that was in the works during the development of Metroid Prime 2. This title would have taken place immediately after Prime 1 instead, where Samus would enter cryosleep on her journey home. With the ship on autopilot, it would get pulled into and trapped on a derelict vessel stuck between dimensions. Here, Samus would find a rogue AI controlling the ship, limiting her abilities in the process. Despite having all of her arsenal from Prime 1, the player would have to use the skills available to her and a little cunning to surmount all obstacles. Now, taking your items from you is sort of a classic idea, especially in the Prime trilogy. Since this was the starting point in my Metroid journey, it's a concept I'm quite familiar with. However, I think the idea of having everything available to you from the start, yet limited for one reason or another, is an extremely cool concept, and one that could easily be revisited in a new title. With a fresh spin on the concept, it'd make for a great way to not only get players excited about a new title, but to also get the developers excited about even making a new title. Clearly, there's been some apprehension to make and release a new title in the series, and with Nintendo hellbent on providing the most unique experience possible, I can only imagine they've got so caught up in that premise that it's held them back from giving us anything new. Maybe they've been focused on motion controls, or maybe it's that they want a bigger story. I don't know. I won't speculate, but something fresh like this, something from an inherent gameplay standpoint that's different, could be all that's needed to jolt them into action. While all my previous picks tend to sit around mechanics, they're still the matter of a good story. It's something weird in the context of Metroid, too. They totally have a story, but it's always a little bit under the surface. We don't need a whole lot of detail to get us going, yet there has to always be some amount of motivation there. Metroid is also a series full of lore, with quite a few interesting characters that could be incorporated into a new title. Take for example one of Samus's rival hunters, Weevil. Appearing in Metroid Prime Hunters, he was damaged massively by Samus in a fight, turning him into a cyborg. Luckily for him, his brain brain was left intact, and with that, all of his memories. If you were reduced to nothing but a brain and spine by someone, wouldn't you want to take revenge if you survived? So, what if we got a game where Weevil appeared, taking on a sort of Dark Samus-esque role? He'd start a set of absolutely horrible chain of events under the guise of forcing Samus's hand. You'd have to go to this planet to scope things out, where things would quickly take an interesting turn. With just enough of a setup established about Weevil's backstory, and knowing that he committed some nefarious acts, you'd have true motivation moving forward, at which point all the glorious Metroid isolation and exploration could take over, with one of your fellow hunters the final goal. It'd be a way of separating the game from other Metroid titles, whilst incorporating interesting and unexplored territory from the lore. Lastly of all, goddamn Nintendo, just give me something. I repeat, it's been nearly 5 years since we even got a game, with projects cancelled and no news otherwise. I don't care if I have to wait longer for a great Metroid game, but at least give me some faith that something is actually in the works. That's all I want, Nintendo, just come on, man. Don't let one poorly received game set you back that much. And don't let such a huge focus on interesting mechanics get in the way of providing something simple and wonderful. While I'd welcome a new take on the formula, as I've already detailed, we don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel here. Give us amazing new places to explore with fantastic and unique visuals, and let us blast all the creepy crawlies we want. New Metroid, gimme, please. That is all.